So, right, Steve Martin, a documentary in two parts. Part two is now. And in this one, we hear from Jerry Seinfeld, Lorne Michaels, Adam Gopnik, John McCune, Melinda Dobbs, who's Steve's sister, Selena Gomez, Tina Fey, Martin Short, Diane Keaton, Eric Idle, Frank Oz, Michael Ailes, Carl Guttileb. Who else shows up? Eric Frischel, who Eric Fischel, I thought really looks like oh god, homie from Curb Your Larry, Larry, the guy that helped create Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's who I think Eric looks like. Anyway, Harry Bliss is in part two, and his wife, Anne Springfield. Right, the gist basically what part two is, right? So now focuses on the present day with Martin in the golden years of his career, retracing the transformation that led to happiness in his art and personal life. So yeah, it's so different to part one then, but it works so well as a compliment, right? Because we get this really interesting retrospective, with Steve just looking back on things and talking about, the career as of, him looking at it right now. In part one, there's these reflections and stuff, but that's kind of, in hindsight, the few things are kind of like in hindsight. Yes, I realize now at this point, but we're having this very honest, I mean, as honest as you can get with these kind of things, right? This very honest look. And we see these interesting relationships. I mean, it's always fascinating seeing him with Martin Short, right? They have such a great connection and chemistry. So there's that. But Anne, the way Anne, like, talks about him, talks about their daughter, there's just something magical there, right? There's, you have people and they say things and they, exhume all this, supposed happy, but you can see it's a front, it's an act. But when she's talking, like how they met, like just that, I don't know, there's this quietness about it, but there's this just, it rings of honesty and love, right? And I think that it is such a nice thing to see, right? Because we've got all of this talk about, this big stand up and then this big film star, this big musician, to this author, this playwright, you know what I mean? Just all of these different things. But then you get this more personal reflection and this different look at who Steve Martin is, and it's really nice. It was just really, I think it worked so well. I like the fact he doesn't show his daughter, right? You would just see a stick person, because yeah, you don't need that. Like, we don't need to see his daughter to understand who Steve Martin is, you know but it's just this interesting, and we see these bits, right? There's an interview where he's talking about his art and how he wants to keep that private, and then later on he's showing the art, right? So we can see this journey, right? He's talking about the journey that he's been on and those transitions in life and the evolution, and the way different things have affected him and all of that. But you can see it just within those two, conversations, right? How he was closed off. He was very possessive of the things that he found pleasure in. And now he's a happier person and he's just like, yeah, he can share this side of him with the world. So all of that was yeah, it was fascinating. Now, what was so what was so frustrating. Now, I was watching like a press copy. So maybe in the copy that's in the version that screens, it might be different, but the subtitles, Jesus Christ, the subtitles are fucking tiny. These tiny white subtitles at the bottom of the screen that aren't there for that long. There's no background, so you're losing them in a light background. You know what I mean? Just what's happening on the screen is just ridiculous. There's other bits where Morgan is asking Steve questions. And again, you've got the subtitles, but they're very quick because it's a question. And it's just like the question comes out really muffled, like Steve. And you're just like, what the fuck was that? Like, surely you can just go in and make the question louder. Why don't you just do that? Why are you doing this? It's such a terrible, aesthetic choice. It is so weird. So weird. Like, I enjoyed this, both of these documentaries. That was the most frustrating part of it all. I mean, just the fucking subtitles, right? And the garbled fucking question. Just, I wish they had sorted that out. Everything else is really interesting. It's great. I enjoyed this. It's you know, I think it works to get this look, this understanding on Steve Martin, his career, right? It is interesting to think that he quits comedy at oh god, how old was he when he quit? I think he quit comedy at 35, which is just like, huh, right? But like he wanted that adoration. So you're thinking, oh, I'll be a film star, right? So he moves to film. But then he kind of comes back to comedy now with Martin Shaw, which is and just the way they're putting the show together is kind of weird, right? Kind of weird when you think about doing stand up, right? Doing stand up, you go to a club and you practice, you write your jokes, right? That's the thing, man. You can write jokes and you can think, "Ah, that's pretty funny." And then you go and you say it on that stage, and people don't always laugh. Or people laugh at a point where you just think, oh, but that's not the funny bit, right? The funny bit is, so sometimes you get laughs at the weird points, right? But you're practicing, you're seeing what works. And just because something doesn't work in one room doesn't mean it's rubbish, right? It can work in another room. So that's the odd thing about all of this. But what they're doing is writing jokes down and then talking between themselves, thinking, "Oh, that will work. That won't work. Let's keep that." Blah, blah, blah," and then doing it. So there's no practice. It's just like, all right, let's go and see what happens. Which is just, yeah, kind of seems crazy to me. But it is interesting watching, that process, for the small part that we see, right? Him talking about his childhood and that kind of understanding about, I guess, fatherhood and all of those kind of things, you know? Yeah. It's, as I said, it's really different to part one, but still a fascinating piece. So I highly recommend checking out Steve Martin, a documentary in two parts. You know, both parts are about an hour and a half, just slightly over an hour and a half. So, you know, there's a bit to watch, but you know, it reveals a lot. You know, so I think if you like documentaries, if you like comedy, right? So if Steve Martin is your favorite actor, if you like the banjo, I mean, who likes the banjo? But if you like all of these things, I think you will enjoy this documentary, which is screening on Apple TV Plus. Enjoy.